Hello everyone, welcome to our podcast. We're KeysToDiabetes, we're a public health campaign. My name is Ali.
I'm Khaled.
Lina. Farah.
Okay, so what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about a few studies and media outlets that we found online and on some specific scientific journals and see and discuss them about type 2 diabetes. The first of which is actually I found on a number of news websites such as the Evening Standard, Daily Mail and The Sun. So it's actually looking at coffee and the incidence of it reducing type 2 diabetes with a consumption of 4 cups of coffee. So what it says is that an international team of scientists tried to discover the association between coffee and type 2 diabetes and what is known as an umbrella term of metabolic syndrome. So metabolic syndrome is a cluster of conditions that occur together such as type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure and obesity. It was conducted in Navarro University in America, and it looked at the different reasoning behind why an increased coffee consumption can reduce the incidence of type 2 diabetes. What do you guys think of this study so far?
It's actually quite interesting thing I actually read the other day on the Evening Standard, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, however, I would like to mention is that the study was actually paid for by coffee companies.
Yeah, that's completely correct.
Aware of that.
That's definitely.
So I didn't really take it very serious just because it could be biased. However, if there is a link between coffee and the reduction of diabetes prevalence, or it can actually prevent the diabetes and actually reduce your blood pressure, then that's very good. Just because in our diets we do recommend to patients that they do consume coffee, specifically black coffee, without sugar.
'Cause 0 calories.
0 calories, got no calories, doesn't affect insulin at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. So yeah, as you said, the study was actually commissioned by the Institute for Scientific Information on Coffee, which is, funnily enough, a body that is funded by coffee companies.
Yeah.
So obviously
So we can't take it that seriously.
exactly, it's nothing that you could take too seriously, which is why that we thought would be quite important to bring it to you guys, because obviously sometimes you see things in the news and you think, oh wow, coffee and diabetes, let me go drink 5 cups of coffee.
Yeah, it's still quite interesting though. Hopefully more studies will go into it.
It does say at the end that further research needs to be done to better clarify the association.
Most of the times we don't recommend coffee, for example, or at least in the limited amount. But that's really interesting.
Yeah.
It says coffee.
I found it. That's why I bought it.
That's really cool.
I found it quite
and
interesting.
This is a new one. As
New
you
study
said.
only 2 days ago it
If
came out.
it's true, I'm never going to have diabetes. I
Yeah.
have diabetes.
And so looking at a couple of other studies. These are from proper scientific journals. So we were trying to show everyone the difference between some like anecdotal study that you'd find in the media and some scientifically, peer-reviewed journals. So another study that we look at is the importance of reversibility and type 2 diabetes. There's a lot of talk about whether type 2 diabetes as a condition is reversible or not. What we looked at is 2 studies, one in Science Daily and one in the World Journal of Diabetes. First of which, let's talk about the Science Daily one. So it's a study conducted in Newcastle University by Professor Roy Taylor. He had a hypothesis called the twin cycle hypothesis, and it looked at the type 2 diabetes that is caused by excess fats in both the liver and pancreas. So it became that the patients who had both fatty liver and fatty pancreas were associated with a poorly insulin response. So what that meant is after the study was done, they were put on a very low calorie diet, and it looked at that the factors that caused these were reversed. So after 7 days of this low calorie diet, it resulted in normalization of the insulin. And also after 8 weeks, the raised pancreas fat content fell to a normal level and the normal insulin secretion became re-established, which showed that they were able to return to normal plasma glucose. What do you guys think of that?
One thing I would like to know is whether they measured HbA1c at all in the study.
You know what? It actually doesn't say, but
it doesn't say.
But I'm pretty sure that obviously HbA1c.
And do they actually go back to looking at the patients after a certain amount of time? So how long is the remission for?
So it does say that a further study in general practice was conducted called the DIRECT, so Diabetes Remission Clinical Trial. That's funded by Diabetes UK, and that's underway now to determine this approach in primary care. Okay, so they are looking at bringing out the study to primary care all over the UK. One thing that's actually quite important to note, so this approach that we talked about, having a very low calorie diet, brought about a 15 kilogram average weight loss, which is quite a lot. So we know that from what we've studied.
So 15 kilograms in over 8 weeks.
Yeah, 15 kilograms over 8 weeks.
From other studies I've read, sustainability. So losing such a drastic amount of weight in such a short space of time
It's not very
sustainable.
Course,
so on
True,
average, losing about 800 grams to about a kilogram a week is like the recommended
Benchmark.
amount.
The normal one.
Yeah.
Another study that they actually talked about in this study is the counterbalance study. This was in 2016, and it demonstrated that type 2 diabetes remains reversible for up to 10 years after being diagnosed. So obviously that's quite an extraordinary claim, because it means that people who are even on medication may have their diabetes reversed. So it says that after 6 months of weight loss, this is some stats from the study, 6 months of weight loss maintenance, 43% of the patients who were recruited onto the study had fasting plasma glucose of less than 7.
Were these patients adequately controlled with how many different classes of drugs? I would like to know.
So I don't think this involved any patients that were actually diet. It was mainly for patients who were diet controlled rather than being on any medication. But then, funny you say that. So let's look at our other study, which this is conducted, as I said, in the World Journal of Diabetes, and it's a review of different evidence-based studies that surround, the reversibility of type 2 diabetes. So this one specifically mentions pre-diabetes, and for those who don't know, pre-diabetes is where, so someone who goes into their GP, they have a high blood glucose level, but it's not quite high enough to be confirmed diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. That's where then intervention takes place, where you're recommended to go on a diet, exercise, to hopefully reduce the prevalence and reduce the incidence of diabetes for all these patients who are pre-diabetic.
And that's what all our campaign is all about. We try to prevent
exactly.
that from
That's why we're here. Keys to Diabetes, everyone.
Yeah.
But so this one looked at how a better term to be established would be the term remission rather than reversibility.
That sounds better,
So why do you guys think that is?
Just because you said that the diabetes is tends to come back after 10 years, so you're not completely reversing it.
Of course.
Exactly.
So remission would probably be a more sensible term to describe this this event.
So remission, it's used in many other conditions like cancer and chronic conditions. It's very important. I feel like using the word remission will give people a bit more.
However, I do understand the reason for why they've used the word reverse. When people who are diabetic see the word reverse, they get more. They're more persuaded to try and control. It encourages them a lot to try and actually try and reverse it by controlling the diet, taking the medications on time, etc., etc.
So this actually randomized clinical trial was found that 40.7% with the patients who had type 2 diabetes had completed partial remission at 12 months. So after being on this weight loss regime, they had partial remission or complete remission at 12 months. So after a year, that's quite a majority, or not a majority, 40% roughly, had gone back into not diabetic, which is quite an extraordinary amount. And that means that's independent of medication. So that means that they weren't even taking any medication.
But as long as they keep going.
As long as they keep, exactly.
And these were all pre-diabetic patients, weren't they? Okay.
So this particular study looked at the long-term effect of an intervention rather than, so the other one focused on the more short-term, 8 weeks. This one's over a whole period of a year. So it's quite nice to compare the both of the time frames to see the results. Looking at the last study, it's on, so this is actually on diabetes.co.uk. I found this online. It talks about the gut microbes and how it can prevent a way for type 2 diabetes to, prevent the occurrence of type 2 diabetes.
That's interesting.
So this study in particular recruited 39 men with pre-diabetes. Again, they had to be pre-diabetic, and they were associated with better outcomes when they participated in physical activity. So they were split into two groups, some of which were to avoid any type of exercise, and others took part in a 3-month high-intensity physical activity program. Now, at the end of the study, it was found that 70% of those in the active group had improved their glucose metabolism and insulin sensitivity, but the other 30% had not. All the men were similar ages and similar weight at the start of the
I was
study.
about to ask about
Yeah.
age.
Yeah, that's always an important factor. And then, so to look at the gut microbe part of the study, it was found that, so again, the gut, how it is able to react to insulin, the sensitivity associated with insulin. So it associated with better insulin sensitivity. So it was what was done. It was that the research was taken. This wasn't on human participants. It was actually on mice. I believe this is early stage clinical trials. So what it was done, the stage saw that the transplant of microbes taken from human participants into these mice, which were obese, and it was associated that after this transplantation of the microbes that are in the gut, they had improved insulin sensitivity, and after the whole study, they developed better insulin sensitivity and glucose regulation. It doesn't actually talk about the specific microbes. It just says that these microbes had been linked to the breaking down of amino acids. Nothing too specific.
Were these taken from those male patients that?
I think so.
That
Those
was on
exactly.
the
So,
exercise,
so
or?
it was the second part of the study. So the
Okay.
first part was that the patients who built up that stability with their insulin sensitivity,
Okay, yeah.
they built up the exercise tolerance. Those patients who had something, I guess, in the stomach, which broke down the amino acids to help with increased fat.
So would injecting protease, for example, into the mice's stomach result in the same outcome, would you say? Since protease also breaks down amino acids.
Maybe actually, I mean, because I feel like this is specific microbes that is linked to insulin rather than just a general one.
Okay.
So that's everything for today. Thank you very much for listening. Hope it's all been useful. As I said, so this just looks at the studies and different studies that have been in the media and online. That's why it's very important for you to look into what you're reading just to see its relatability and its actual reliability, to be honest, because it's really important that although the study does say, drink a lot of coffee, you need to understand the importance of maybe it is not really a final study and it's not really got any clinical evidence behind it. So yeah, thank you very much. We've already enjoyed sharing this information with you. Hope check out our page, KeysToDiabetes, and give us a like and a follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.